My cheating fiancé's friends physically attacked me after I refused to marry her. So I pressed charges and sent them all to jail. I, 28M, am still processing everything that's happened over the past 10 months. What started as a normal engagement ended with 3 people in state prison, 2 on probation, my ex-fiancée facing jail time, and her lawyer boyfriend potentially being disbarred. I need to get this off my chest. My ex-fiancée and I were together for 4 years before I proposed. We met through mutual friends at the sports bar I manage. She worked as a real estate agent and had this tight-knit group of 5 friends from high school. They were all successful professionals, 2 lawyers, a doctor, a finance executive, and a marketing director. Initially, I thought their close friendship was admirable. We moved in together after dating for a year. The apartment was in my name since I had better credit and a longer rental history in the building. Everything seemed stable. She was doing well in real estate, I was advancing in my restaurant management career, and our families got along great. I proposed last December during a weekend trip to the mountains. She said yes, and we started planning an October wedding. That's when subtle changes began. Her friend group became increasingly controlling of our wedding plans, insisting on being involved in every decision. They'd often make condescending remarks about how I wasn't in their professional league because I worked in the service industry. In mid-April, one of my regular customers at the bar, a detective with the local PD, showed me something concerning. He had surveillance photos from an ongoing investigation, unrelated to us, that happened to capture my fiancée entering and leaving an upscale hotel with her ex-boyfriend, now a corporate lawyer, on multiple occasions over 2 months. The detective wasn't officially investigating her, but felt I should know since we were friends. When I confronted her that evening, she initially denied everything. After I mentioned the photos, she broke down and admitted to a 2-month affair. She claimed it was just physical and happened after running into her ex at a real estate networking event in February. She begged me not to cancel the wedding, saying her parents had already paid most deposits and her friends had booked expensive flights and accommodations. I told her the wedding was off and requested she move out within 30 days, as per our state's tenant laws, even though she wasn't on the lease. That's when things escalated quickly. She called her friends, and within an hour, all 5 of them arrived at our apartment. They began verbally attacking me, calling me controlling and abusive. My ex had apparently told them I was threatening to illegally evict her. I remained calm and asked them to leave my property, stating I would call the police if they didn't. Instead of leaving, they started destroying things in my apartment. One of them grabbed a framed photo of my late grandmother and smashed it. I immediately called 911. This enraged 3 of them, the 2 lawyers and the finance executive. One grabbed a kitchen knife, another tried to restrain me, and the third began punching me repeatedly. My detective friend had apparently anticipated trouble after showing me the photos and was already en route when I called 911. The police arrived just as one of them was attempting to stab me. They had to use tasers on 2 of them who refused to comply with police orders. Even as they were being arrested, these women showed no remorse. They kept screaming about how I was ruining their lives and careers. My ex-fiancée stood there crying, begging me not to press charges, insisting her friends were just being protective. The police documented everything, including their threats and my injuries, and took them into custody. The immediate aftermath was intense. I spent 6 hours in the emergency room that night getting treatment for a deep laceration on my right arm requiring 12 stitches, multiple contusions, and facial bruising. The police conducted thorough documentation of my injuries and collected my torn, blood-stained shirt as evidence. A victim advocate from the DA's office met me at the hospital to explain my rights and the legal process ahead. The 3 main attackers spent the weekend in county jail before their arraignment. They were each charged with multiple felonies: assault with a deadly weapon, aggravated battery, and criminal threatening. The 2 who destroyed property but didn't participate in the physical assault were charged with criminal mischief, a misdemeanor in our state. All 5 were served with temporary restraining orders before release. During the arraignment, my ex's friends shocked everyone by appearing in designer suits with a team of high-powered attorneys, expecting to walk out immediately. Instead, the judge set substantial bail given the violent nature of the attack and their apparent lack of remorse. 3 of them made bail, but had to surrender their passports and wear ankle monitors due to being flight risks because of their financial resources and international business connections. In the following weeks, my ex-fiancée launched a calculated harassment campaign. She filed a retaliatory police report claiming I had been financially and emotionally abusive throughout our relationship. She began showing up at my workplace during peak hours, causing scenes and telling customers I was abusive. After the 3rd incident, my employer's legal team helped me obtain a workplace protection order. Her lawyer boyfriend, believing himself untouchable, started sending threatening emails to both me and my detective friend. He claimed he had friends in the DA's office who would make the charges disappear. Every threat was documented and forwarded to the DA's office and the State Bar Association, triggering an ethics investigation into his conduct. My ex's parents, who had already paid $40,000 in wedding deposits, started harassing my family. They showed up at my parents' house multiple times, demanding they convince me to drop the charges. After the fourth unannounced visit, my father filed for a restraining order, which was granted due to their escalating behavior. Throughout May, my ex and her two friends who weren't in custody orchestrated a social media smear campaign. They posted heavily edited clips from my apartment's security footage, trying to paint me as the aggressor. However, this backfired when my attorney subpoenaed the complete security footage from the building management, which clearly showed them as the aggressors. The DA's office took the case seriously, particularly after discovering the social media tampering attempts. Following the preliminary hearing in June, where the prosecution presented the unedited security footage and medical evidence, they offered plea deals: 24 months in state prison with possibility of parole after 18 months, plus 5 years probation for the three main attackers. The other two were offered 18 months probation and 200 hours of community service. All five initially rejected the plea deals, convinced their status as respected professionals would protect them. Their defense strategy relied heavily on character witnesses and their clean records. However, in late June, everything changed when one of the two friends charged with criminal mischief cracked under the pressure. She came forward through her attorney with evidence that completely changed the case. A group chat showing my ex had orchestrated the entire confrontation. The messages revealed a premeditated plan to provoke me into acting violently while recording it, hoping to justify the affair and gain sympathy from our social circle. They had even discussed ways to make me appear unstable to the police. The pretrial phase lasted from July through October, with multiple motions and hearings. Their defense attorneys tried everything to suppress evidence, particularly the group chat messages and building security footage. The judge denied most motions, ruling that the evidence was properly obtained and admissible. During this time, the State Bar Association's investigation into my ex's lawyer boyfriend intensified. They discovered he had helped her file the false police report about alleged abuse, even drafting it himself, a serious ethical violation. He had also attempted to contact members of the grand jury through mutual acquaintances, leading to additional ethics charges. The prosecution's case grew stronger when forensic analysis of the phones revealed deleted messages showing extensive premeditation. My ex had actually researched similar cases where women claimed self-defense against abusive partners, looking for ways to create a convincing scenario. The messages also showed her friends advising her to wait until after the wedding because she'd get a better settlement if we divorced rather than just breaking up. By September, the DA's office had compiled an airtight case including complete security footage from multiple building cameras, medical documentation of my injuries, the knife with fingerprints and DNA evidence, over 300 pages of text messages showing premeditation, police body cam footage from the arrest, phone records showing the coordination before the attack, documentation of the subsequent harassment campaign, testimony from building staff and neighbors, financial records showing wedding deposits and planned misuse. The trial began in early November. The prosecution's opening statement laid out a clear timeline of premeditated attack and subsequent cover-up attempts. My testimony lasted 2 full days, with their attorneys trying to paint me as controlling and aggressive. However, my calm demeanor and consistent account, backed by extensive evidence, resonated with the jury. The prosecution systematically dismantled their defense. Their claims of protecting a friend from abuse fell apart when confronted with their own messages joking about the planned attack. Their professional reputations actually worked against them, as the jury saw their actions as more egregious given their understanding of legal consequences. The turning point came when their co-conspirator testified. She provided detailed accounts of planning meetings where they discussed ways to provoke me and manipulate evidence. Her testimony revealed how they had chosen my apartment for the confrontation specifically because they knew about the security cameras, planning to edit the footage to support their narrative. My ex's testimony in her friend's defense backfired spectacularly. Under cross-examination, she accidentally admitted to planning the confrontation weeks in advance, contradicting her previous statements to police. She also revealed that her lawyer boyfriend had coached her on how to file the false police report without getting caught. The three main attackers were found guilty on all counts after just 6 hours of jury deliberation. The judge, citing their lack of remorse and abuse of their professional knowledge, sentenced them to 36 months in state prison with no possibility of parole for 24 months, plus 5 years of probation. He specifically noted how their status as legal professionals made their premeditated actions more reprehensible. The two who had accepted plea deals earlier received 18 months probation and 300 hours of community service. The one who testified received a more lenient sentence of 12 months probation considering her cooperation and genuine remorse. My ex now faced her own legal troubles. Based on evidence revealed during the trial, she was charged with conspiracy, filing false police reports, and perjury. Her real estate license was suspended pending investigation into separate ethical violations discovered during the trial, including evidence that she had helped clients create fraudulent loan applications. Following a series of post-trial motions and appeals in December, all three main attackers began serving their sentences in early January. Their appeals were denied, with the appellate court upholding both the convictions and sentences. Their professional licenses were automatically suspended due to felony convictions. Both lawyers were disbarred, and the finance executive lost her Series 7 and 63 certifications. My ex took a plea deal in mid-December after her own pre-trial hearings revealed the full extent of evidence against her. She received 18 months in county jail with 6 months suspended, plus 3 years of probation. She's required to complete anger management courses and pay $45,000 in restitution covering my medical bills, property damage, and legal fees. The judge also ordered her to undergo psychiatric evaluation and treatment. Her lawyer boyfriend's career imploded spectacularly. The State Bar Association's Ethics Committee found multiple violations, including helping file false police reports, witness tampering, and abuse of his position. He was disbarred in December, and the DA's office is pursuing criminal charges for his role in fabricating evidence and attempting to influence the grand jury. Their civil troubles are mounting. My apartment complex filed lawsuits for damages to the property and reputation. Their former employers are suing for breach of contract and reputational damage. The estimated legal costs for each of them now exceed $200,000, not including the civil judgments they're likely to face. The two who received probation have been quietly serving their community service hours at local animal shelters. Their probation officers report full compliance, and they've maintained their distance as required by the restraining orders. One sent a genuine apology letter through her attorney, acknowledging their role in enabling and participating in my ex's schemes. The friend who testified has been actively working to make amends. She's completed voluntary anger management courses and speaks at legal ethics seminars about the consequences of group misconduct. Her testimony and subsequent cooperation led to several additional investigations into professional misconduct within their social circle. My ex's parents finally stopped their harassment campaign after losing a civil suit I filed for intentional infliction of emotional distress. They paid a $25,000 settlement and issued a formal apology through their attorney. They've since moved to another state, and I've heard they're in family counseling trying to understand how they enabled their daughter's behavior. The corporate office of my bar officially promoted me to regional manager overseeing 5 locations. The investigation into my ex's false complaints actually highlighted my professional handling of the situation. They've implemented my documentation and security protocols across all their locations. My detective friend provided crucial support throughout this ordeal. His early warning and guidance on documenting everything made a significant difference in the legal proceedings. We've become close friends, and he's introduced me to his circle of friends who have helped me rebuild my social life. In January, I moved to a new apartment in a secure building across town. The property management company, aware of my situation through public records, installed additional security features at no cost. I've started seeing a trauma counselor to process everything, which has been helping significantly. I'm sharing this story now because the legal proceedings are finally complete. The appeals have been denied, restitution arrangements are in place, and all restraining orders have been made permanent. My attorney confirmed I can legally share these details as they're now public record. The experience taught me valuable lessons about standing firm in the face of manipulation and gaslighting. When they tried to provoke me into violence, my choice to remain calm and trust the legal system ultimately exposed their true nature. Their attempt to abuse the legal system to attack me ended up destroying their own careers and reputations instead. For anyone facing similar situations, document everything, trust the legal process even when it seems slow, and don't let anyone convince you that protecting yourself makes you the villain. The truth has a way of coming out, even when those trying to hide it have power and resources.
Mile thought she could steal the $30,000 vacation I paid for and get away with it. She didn't expect the surprise I had waiting for her. I, 32M, still can't believe what just happened over the past few months. After saving for 3 years and meticulously planning, I booked a dream European vacation for my wife and me, costing around $30,000. This wasn't just any vacation, it was meant to be our delayed honeymoon since we couldn't afford one when we got married 5 years ago. Some context, my wife and I both come from middle-class families. We've worked hard to build our careers, are in a successful restaurant franchise, and my wife is a pediatric nurse. We're not flashy with money, but we believe in saving for experiences that matter. When we got married, My male disapproved because she thought I wasn't successful enough for her daughter. Over time, she seemed to change her mind, especially after my business started doing well. The problems began during a family dinner where I announced our vacation plans. I had booked a 3-week tour across Italy, France, and Greece, with premium accommodations and exclusive experiences. My wife was thrilled. She'd always dreamed of visiting Europe. However, Maëlle's expression shifted noticeably when I mentioned the cost. She kept pressing for specific details about the bookings and itinerary. Soon after, my wife told me her mother had been constantly talking about how she and Fiancée never experienced a proper European vacation. She kept dropping hints like, it would be wonderful if someone arranged such a trip for us, and we're getting older, we might not have many opportunities left. I recognized the manipulation, but chose not to engage. The situation intensified when Elle invited us over. She cooked my wife's favorite meal and was unusually pleasant toward me. After dinner, she revealed her true intentions. She suggested that since she and Fiancée were more experienced travelers, they'd only visited Canada twice, they should take this vacation instead. Her logic? My wife and I were young and had plenty of time for future trips. She even tried to convince us by offering $5,000 as compensation. When I politely declined, explaining this was our honeymoon trip, Maëlle's friendly facade crumbled. She called me selfish and accused me of flaunting my wealth to embarrass them. My wife attempted to mediate, but Elle began crying, claiming she'd never forgive us for denying them, possibly their last chance to see Europe. Things deteriorated when other family members became involved. Maëlle started sharing passive-aggressive social media posts about selfish people who don't respect their elders. My wife was becoming increasingly stressed, caught between her mother's manipulation and our plans. Maëlle then took it further by showing up at my wife's hospital, causing a scene in the lobby about how I had changed her daughter and turned her against the family. My wife came home completely upset. That's when I decided to take action. What they weren't aware of was that I already had a strategy in place. After seeing Maëlle's reaction at the dinner announcement, my instincts told me something was off. Having dealt with her entitled behavior before, I had taken several legal precautions with our bookings, measures that would prove invaluable very soon. The situation escalated when I discovered unauthorized access attempts to our booking accounts. My wife later revealed that her mother had borrowed her phone during that family dinner, claiming she needed to make an emergency call. Instead, she had accessed my wife's email where I had shared our itinerary details. After the hospital incident, I received multiple security alerts about attempted modifications to our bookings. Upon checking, I found several attempts to change the passenger names to my in-laws' names. The attempts failed because I had specifically arranged for dual-factor authentication and identity verification for any booking changes. The login attempts were traced back to my in-laws' home IP address. Rather than confronting them immediately, I decided to set a trap. I created a decoy itinerary with mock booking references and intentionally left it accessible in my wife's email account. Then I waited. As expected, within hours there were modification attempts on these fake bookings. I allowed these changes to go through. Elle, believing she had succeeded, promptly called my wife, insisting we come over for an urgent family meeting. Upon arrival, we found a full family gathering at Fiancée, and my wife's aunt and uncle were all present. Maëlle had orchestrated what she called an intervention. She began by claiming how deeply hurt she was that we were showing off our wealth, while they had sacrificed everything for their children. Then she revealed her scheme. With evident satisfaction, Maëlle announced she had resolved the situation. She claimed to have successfully transferred the bookings to her and Fiancée's names, presenting it as a fait accompli. She handed me an envelope containing $5,000, declaring this was generous compensation for our inconvenience. My wife stood frozen in disbelief. Elle sat there with a smug expression. The aunt and uncle appeared visibly uncomfortable, but remained silent. Fiancé maintained his usual passive stance, allowing his wife to dominate the situation. Calmly, I took out my phone and displayed the legitimate bookings still secured in our names. I demonstrated how Maëlle had actually fallen for my trap by only managing to modify fake reservations. Her expression transformed from triumphant to mortified as the reality sank in. But I wasn't finished. I played an audio recording from the travel agency's security department, capturing Maëlle attempting to impersonate me to change the bookings. I had already alerted our travel agency about potential fraud attempts, and they had documented all suspicious calls as per their security protocol. Maëlle's face drained of color. She began shouting accusations that I had deliberately set her up to humiliate her in front of the family. Elle joined in, calling me manipulative and underhanded. Finally, my wife found her voice and posed a direct question to her mother. Did you really think you could steal our honeymoon and get away with it? The room erupted into chaos. Maëlle tried to deflect, claiming she was testing our respect for family hierarchy. However, I revealed that I had already filed a police report documenting the attempted fraud, supported by digital evidence from the travel agency's security team. I explained that I had consulted with my attorney, who confirmed that MIL's actions constituted attempted wire fraud and identity theft under federal law, as she had tried to fraudulently modify bookings across state lines. The travel agency's legal department was already investigating the incident, having documented multiple instances where she attempted to impersonate me. Al finally broke his silence, demanding that I withdraw the police report to protect the family's reputation. That's when I revealed additional evidence, a documented trail of text messages between SIL and MIL, outlining their weeks-long scheme. The messages detailed plans to resell our prepaid excursion bookings to other travelers and pocket the money. My wife stood there, devastated by the extent of the betrayal. She removed her mother's family heirloom necklace, her wedding day gift, and placed it silently on the table. Mil's composure shattered completely. She launched into accusations about me manipulating her daughter, claimed I had entrapped her into committing fraud, and threatened to spread rumors about me abusing my wife. At this point, my wife's aunt stepped forward with her own revelation. She disclosed that MIL had pressured her to provide false testimony about witnessing abusive behavior. The aunt, apologizing to us, explained she had only attended this intervention to expose MIL's manipulation. She played a recorded conversation where MIL explicitly asked her to make false statements about my character. The aunt explained she had been documenting MIL's pattern of manipulative behavior through recorded conversations, which is legal in our state's single-party consent laws. Al lunged for the aunt's phone, causing a commotion. During the chaos, Al knocked over a decorative vase and finally lost his composure, directing his anger at me for destroying family harmony. He threatened to disinherit my wife unless we dropped everything and transferred the vacation to them. I calmly informed them that all evidence was securely stored with my attorney, including recordings of their current threats and attempted coercion. I mentioned that the detective handling the case would be particularly interested in their attempts to obstruct justice through threats and false accusations. Right on cue, my phone rang. It was the detective calling for a scheduled follow-up on the case. I activated the speakerphone. IL and FIL fell silent as the detective explained they had sufficient evidence for multiple criminal charges, including attempted wire fraud, identity theft, and criminal impersonation. Nell visibly paled as the detective outlined potential federal charges. Elle began sobbing, realizing she could face accessory charges. Elle ordered everyone to leave immediately. This was when I presented my prepared resolution. After consulting with my attorney, I offered them a legal settlement agreement with specific conditions. They would sign a notarized affidavit acknowledging their attempted fraud and manipulation. They would commit to attending professional counseling sessions. They would reimburse all legal expenses incurred, including the travel agency's security investigation costs. Finally, they would provide written apologies to both my wife and the travel agency for the attempted fraud. Mal initially refused, but FIL and SIL quickly reconsidered when the detective explained that prosecution would mean a public record of federal charges, potentially impacting their employment and future travel abilities. Under their attorney's advice, they signed the legally binding agreement I had prepared. The consequences were immediate. Despite our efforts to maintain privacy, information spread through family circles, primarily because SIL vented to friends about the unfair settlement terms. Several family members, upon learning the full extent of the attempted fraud, distanced themselves from IL and FIL. The aunt became a close supporter, sharing her documented history of similar manipulative incidents. My wife and I proceeded with our European vacation. The travel agency, impressed by our handling of the fraud attempt, provided complimentary upgrades to superior suites. We also implemented comprehensive identity theft protection services and additional security measures for all our accounts. The most significant outcome came through the legal settlements requirements. Through mandated counseling, MIL and FIL had to confront their pattern of entitled behavior. Their counselor used this case to address long-standing toxic family dynamics. L, in separate required sessions, finally acknowledged her role in enabling and encouraging her mother's manipulative behavior out of resentment toward my wife's success. Currently, we maintain minimal contact with my in-laws, governed by clear boundaries established through our legal agreement. They continue their required counseling, showing modest progress. My wife has found her own counselor to process the betrayal and develop stronger boundary-setting skills. The attempted theft of our $30,000 vacation revealed something more valuable, exposing years of manipulation and enabling my wife to break free from toxic family patterns. We learned that protecting your boundaries sometimes requires decisive legal action. The vacation itself was everything we'd planned. We captured beautiful moments across Europe, all without entitled family members attempting to hijack our experience. The travel agency even implemented new security protocols based on our case, using it as a training example for preventing identity theft and luxury travel bookings. The irony wasn't lost on us. Simply respected our boundaries. We would have likely helped plan and fund their own European trip eventually. Instead, they faced legal fees, mandatory counseling costs, and damaged family relationships. Their sense of entitlement ultimately cost them far more than the vacation they tried to steal.
My wife demanded I turn down my dream job's $80,000 raise because it would make her look bad. I took the job and her true colors came out. I, 34M, have been struggling to process the events of the past 6 months that led to the end of my 6-year marriage, all because my wife couldn't handle my career success. I work as a financial advisor in Boston. I met my wife during our final year of college. She was studying art history while I was completing my business degree. After dating for 3 years and living together for 1, we got married. She currently works as a curator at a mid-sized art gallery, making around $45,000 annually. At my previous firm, I was making $75,000 as an associate advisor. Everything changed when I received an unexpected job offer from one of the top financial advisory firms in Boston. They had been impressed with my consistent client portfolio growth and risk management strategies. The offer was for a senior advisor position with a $155,000 base salary, plus quarterly performance bonuses. This was exactly the career advancement I'd been working towards: comprehensive benefits, clear path to partnership, and the opportunity to work with high net worth clients. When I shared the news with my wife, her reaction completely blindsided me. Instead of being happy, she became hostile. She claimed that me making more than triple her salary would make her look bad to her friends and family. She was worried about feeling inferior and insisted it would create an unhealthy power dynamic in our relationship. This reaction made no sense to me. Throughout our marriage, we'd maintained a clear system for handling finances. We kept separate accounts for personal spending while sharing joint accounts for household expenses, splitting costs proportionally based on our incomes. This arrangement had worked perfectly for years, with neither of us ever expressing any issues. I spent several days trying to reason with her, explaining how this opportunity would secure our financial future. We could build substantial savings, plan for a house in a better neighborhood, even start thinking about investment properties. But she wouldn't listen. Instead, she delivered an ultimatum. Either I turned down the job offer, or she would have to rethink our marriage. I discussed the situation with my parents over dinner that weekend. My father, who had spent 30 years in investment banking, was appalled by her behavior. My mother, who had always gotten along well with my wife and often went shopping with her, couldn't believe what she was hearing. They reminded me how I had always supported my wife's career choices, including when she turned down a higher-paying museum position because she preferred the smaller gallery environment. My sister, a corporate lawyer who has handled her fair share of divorce cases, offered an insightful perspective during our weekly lunch. She pointed out that my wife's extreme reaction likely indicated deeper issues about control and self-worth that had been masked by our previous income similarity. She warned me that giving in to such manipulative demands would only encourage more controlling behavior in the future. After careful consideration, I accepted the job offer. When I told my wife my decision, she became increasingly hostile. She started making snide remarks about how I was choosing money over our marriage and began telling our mutual friends that I had changed and become obsessed with status and wealth. The situation escalated when I received my first quarterly bonus after 3 months. I had exceeded my targets, resulting in a $20,000 bonus. Rather than celebrate this achievement with me, my wife accused me of flaunting my success and deliberately making her feel worthless. She even called my mother-in-law, spinning a story about how I had become materialistic and arrogant. My mother-in-law, who had previously always been reasonable, began taking my wife's side. She started calling me several times a week, trying to guilt me about destroying my marriage for money. My father-in-law, surprisingly, remained neutral and privately expressed that he understood my position, having faced similar career decisions in his own life. By my 4th month at the new firm, the situation had deteriorated further. My wife began spreading malicious rumors at her gallery, telling her co-workers that I was financially controlling her. She claimed I was forcing her to live on a strict budget while I enjoyed my lavish lifestyle. The truth was exactly opposite. I had offered to increase my contribution to our joint expenses to 75% given my higher salary, but she had adamantly refused. My best friend since college, who owns a popular lunch spot near her gallery, overheard her colleagues discussing these allegations during their break. He immediately texted me asking to meet after work. According to him, she had been systematically building a narrative of financial abuse, claiming I was pressuring her to quit her job so she would become financially dependent on me. What happened next shocked me to my core. I discovered she had been secretly recording our conversations without my consent, which is illegal in Massachusetts as it's a 2-party consent state. I only found out because my cousin's wife, who knows one of my wife's gallery colleagues, received one of these doctored recordings and was concerned enough to warn me. These recordings were heavily edited versions of our arguments. She would deliberately start fights about money, provoke me until I showed frustration, then only share the parts where I sounded aggravated. She had carefully curated these clips to paint herself as a victim of emotional abuse. When confronted, she broke down and admitted she was building a case for divorce, planning to claim emotional and financial abuse. I immediately called my sister for legal guidance. Given her experience in corporate law, she helped me understand the serious legal implications of my wife's actions. She advised me to document everything and consult a divorce attorney specializing in high-conflict cases. Additionally, she recommended I inform my firm's HR department and compliance team about the situation, as my wife's false allegations could potentially impact my FINRA registration and client relationships. At home, my wife's behavior became increasingly unpredictable. She alternated between completely ignoring me and having explosive outbursts. During one incident, she grabbed my work laptop and threatened to email my clients about our personal issues. Thanks to our firm's strict security protocols requiring dual-factor authentication, she couldn't access my work accounts, but this attempt to sabotage my professional reputation was deeply disturbing. Following my attorney's advice, I began legally recording our interactions in our shared spaces in Massachusetts, ensuring compliance with state law. I installed visible security cameras in our common areas, with clear signage as required by law. My wife's reaction to the cameras was revealing. She became enraged about being monitored, despite these being openly visible security devices in shared spaces. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law intensified her involvement. She began calling various family members, spreading stories about how my new job had changed me and how I was emotionally abusing her daughter. My uncle, who rarely gets involved in family drama, contacted me with concerns. After I showed him the documented timeline of events and evidence of my wife's manipulation, he was stunned by the extent of her deception. My sister helped me create a comprehensive record of everything, a detailed timeline of my wife's escalating behavior, her attempts at defamation, and her threats against my professional reputation. We gathered statements from witnesses, including my best friend who had overheard the gallery rumors, preserved text messages containing threats, and documented her admission about the illegal recordings. Most importantly, we ensured all evidence collection was fully compliant with Massachusetts law to ensure it would be admissible if needed. The situation came to a head during a family dinner at our house in early October. My wife had organized what she called a family mediation, inviting both sets of parents and her sister. Given the tension, I consulted my attorney before agreeing to attend, and we discussed appropriate boundaries for such a meeting. What was supposed to be a discussion turned into an orchestrated confrontation. My wife and her mother had prepared a presentation of sorts, complete with their curated evidence of my supposed emotional and financial abuse. They began listing incidents taken out of context, distorted versions of our arguments, and completely fabricated claims about financial control. Their plan backfired spectacularly. When my mother-in-law played one of their edited recordings, I calmly pulled out my phone and played the complete version, which I had legally recorded in our shared spaces with visible notice. The full recording clearly showed my wife's provocations and manipulation, including her explicitly stating her intent to make me look bad. The atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically. My father-in-law, a retired business executive who had remained mostly neutral, finally spoke up. He directly asked my wife if she had been deliberately manipulating evidence and spreading false allegations that could damage my professional license. When she couldn't provide a straight answer, he walked out, visibly disgusted. My wife's sister, who works in public relations and had initially believed her sister's version, was visibly shocked. Later that evening, she pulled me aside and apologized profusely. She revealed that my wife had long exhibited signs of status anxiety, frequently comparing herself to her friends' spouses who worked in finance and law. She admitted my wife had often expressed resentment about her curator role, despite having chosen it over higher-paying positions. The dinner ended chaotically when my wife realized her plan had imploded. She ran upstairs, locking herself in our bedroom while screaming about everyone betraying her. Her mother followed, still trying to defend her actions, but it was evident that the truth had been exposed. The next morning, following my attorney's prepared strategy, I had her served with divorce papers at her gallery after hours to avoid public drama. I had already secured a month-to-month lease on an apartment and moved my essential documents, valuables, and a portion of my clothes there, based on my lawyer's guidance. As predicted, she immediately tried to restrict access to our joint accounts, not realizing I had already established separate accounts for my income as advised by counsel. Her next move was predictable. She attempted to file for divorce first, claiming emotional abuse and financial coercion. However, my legal team was prepared with extensive evidence, legally obtained recordings showing her manipulation, notarized statements from witnesses regarding her defamation attempts, documented text messages containing her threats, and security footage of her erratic behavior, all collected in compliance with Massachusetts law. When her attorney reviewed our evidence during preliminary discussions, particularly the documentation of her illegal recordings and attempted professional sabotage, they quickly advised her to pursue a settlement. We had concrete proof of her attempting to damage my FINRA-registered professional status, her admission of falsifying evidence, and her pattern of defamation, all actions that could have serious legal consequences under Massachusetts law. Her final retaliatory attempt involved contacting my firm's compliance department, alleging I had misused company resources to surveil her. Thanks to my sister's earlier advice, I had already documented everything with HR and compliance, including providing them with my attorney's contact information. The firm's legal team responded with a formal cease and desist letter, warning that any further false allegations could result in legal action, as they posed a direct threat to my professional registration. The divorce proceedings moved efficiently through the family court. When my wife's lawyer realized the strength of our evidence regarding her illegal recordings and deliberate defamation attempts, they advised her that pursuing false abuse allegations could result in both civil and criminal penalties under Massachusetts law. After consulting with 3 different attorneys who all gave her the same advice, she finally agreed to mediation. Massachusetts requires a 90-day cooling-off period after filing a divorce complaint before it can become final, which gave both parties time to negotiate reasonably. During mediation, she attempted to claim she deserved a larger portion of our assets because she had limited her career advancement for our marriage. My attorney presented documented evidence of her voluntary career choices, including emails where she explicitly stated her preference for the gallery position over higher-paying opportunities. This effectively ended her demands for additional compensation. The divorce was finalized last month, after the mandatory 6-month NICI period required by Massachusetts law. We had a clean division of assets. No alimony was warranted since both parties were employed and capable of self-support, and we had no children. The division followed standard Massachusetts equitable distribution laws. She kept most of our furniture since I had already established my new residence, while I retained my retirement accounts and investments. We sold our house and split the proceeds based on our documented contributions to the down payment and mortgage payments. The professional fallout was significant. At her gallery, the carefully constructed victim narrative crumbled after several of her colleagues learned about her admitted evidence manipulation during the divorce proceedings. My friend who owned the restaurant told me that many of her co-workers, uncomfortable with how she had manipulated them into spreading false allegations, have distanced themselves from her. My former mother-in-law recently attempted to reconcile, sending an email claiming she had misunderstood the situation. I forwarded it to my attorney without responding. My former father-in-law, however, sent a thoughtful apology, acknowledging he had observed similar behavior patterns in my ex-wife's previous relationships, but had hoped marriage would help her mature. My career has continued to flourish. I've secured several major client portfolios and received another substantial quarterly bonus. My firm, impressed with how I handled the situation professionally while maintaining client confidentiality, has fast-tracked my consideration for a team lead position opening next quarter. This experience has taught me valuable lessons about maintaining professional and personal boundaries. As my sister says, the income disparity didn't cause our marriage to fail. It simply revealed character flaws that had been there all along. While the situation was challenging, I'm grateful it exposed these issues before we had children or more entangled finances. Through mutual connections, I heard my ex-wife has started seeing a therapist to address her deep-seated insecurities and control issues. While I wish her well in her personal growth, I'm relieved I didn't compromise my career aspirations trying to manage her unreasonable demands. Looking back, accepting that job offer was pivotal, not just for my professional growth, but for revealing the true nature of my marriage. It showed me who genuinely supported my success, and who was more concerned with maintaining control. I'm sharing this story because financial control and manipulation can manifest in unexpected ways. Sometimes the person attempting to exert control isn't the higher earner, but rather someone whose insecurities drive them to restrict their partner's growth. I'm thankful for my support system, especially my sister, whose legal expertise helped me navigate this challenging situation properly.
My wife gave me a $10,000 Christmas gift, then proudly announced she funded it with her OnlyFans. I returned it and filed for divorce. I, 32M, have been married to my wife, 29F, for 5 years. We met through mutual friends at a local sports bar where I work as a manager. The chemistry was instant, and within a year and a half of dating, we got married. We both came from middle-class families, and we had always lived within our means. I managed the sports bar while she worked as a dental hygienist at a private practice. Our marriage was generally good for the first 4 years, though we had our occasional disagreements about finances. We weren't struggling, but we couldn't afford many luxuries. My wife often expressed frustration about not being able to travel more or buy designer items like her social media influencer friends. I always encouraged her to pursue additional certifications or look for better paying opportunities in larger dental practices, but she seemed uninterested in putting in the extra effort. Things started changing about 10 months ago. My wife suddenly became very protective of her phone, often staying up late claiming she was networking on Instagram or chatting with friends. I noticed she was spending more money on beauty treatments and new clothes, but she explained it away by saying she got a performance bonus at work. Given that the dental practice was doing well, I had no reason to doubt her. Around 8 months ago, she started suggesting we keep our finances more separate. She opened a new personal account, saying she wanted to be more independent with her money. I agreed, thinking it might help her develop better financial habits. We maintained our joint account for household expenses, with each of us contributing our agreed-upon portion every month. Then came Christmas morning. My wife was unusually excited, practically bouncing off the walls. She handed me a small envelope, watching me intently as I opened it. Inside was a voucher for a $10,000 Rolex watch, something I had casually mentioned liking once when we walked past a jewelry store 6 months ago. I was shocked. This was way beyond our usual gift budget of $500 each. Before I could even ask how she could afford it, she proudly announced, "I've been doing really well on OnlyFans. I started it 8 months ago, and I'm making great money. Isn't it amazing? Now we can afford nice things." The room went silent. My mind struggled to process what she had just said. She continued talking excitedly about her subscriber count and how much money she was making, seemingly oblivious to my growing horror. When I finally found my voice, I asked her what exactly she was posting on OnlyFans. "Oh, nothing too crazy," she said casually. "Just some lingerie pics and teasing videos. Sometimes I do custom requests, but it's all very tasteful. And look how much money I'm making. We can finally have the lifestyle we deserve." I felt completely blindsided. Without saying a word, I got up, took the voucher, and walked out of the house. I drove to my brother's place, where I spent the next 3 days trying to make sense of everything. My wife kept calling and texting, alternating between defending her actions, "It's just modeling," and accusing me of being controlling and insecure. My brother, who works as a paralegal at a family law firm, helped me think things through clearly. He pointed out that this wasn't just about the OnlyFans. It was about the months of deception, the secret account, and the complete disregard for our marriage. When I went through her text history, I realized she had been gaslighting me for months, making me feel guilty for questioning her late-night phone use or new spending habits. After 3 days at my brother's place, I returned home during my wife's scheduled work hours to collect important documents and make copies of our financial records, something my brother advised me to do. What I discovered was even more disturbing. While backing up our shared computer's tax documents and banking information, I found a folder of her OnlyFans content that she had apparently forgotten to move to her personal laptop. It was far from the tasteful lingerie pics she had claimed. There were explicit videos, including some filmed in our bedroom and even in my car without my knowledge or consent. The timestamps on the videos confirmed she had been doing this for exactly 8 months, matching when she opened her separate bank account. Some of the content specifically marketed her as a married woman and even included shots of our wedding rings, using our marriage as a selling point without my knowledge or consent. I documented everything and secured copies of all relevant files. When I confronted her that evening with this evidence, my wife broke down and admitted everything. She revealed that it started when a dental assistant at her practice told her how much money she was making on OnlyFans. My wife created an account just to try it, but got hooked on both the money and the attention. She claimed she was planning to tell me eventually, but was waiting for the right moment. "I thought if I could show you how successful it was becoming, you'd understand," she said through tears. "Some couples do this together and make even more money. We could have such a better life." I returned the Rolex voucher the next day. The jewelry store manager was understanding and processed a refund directly back to the original payment method, my wife's separate account. I then scheduled a consultation with a divorce attorney recommended by my brother's firm, making sure to choose one from a different firm to avoid any potential conflicts of interest. When I told my wife I wanted a divorce, she went into panic mode. She immediately deactivated her OnlyFans account and begged me to reconsider. She claimed she would do anything to save our marriage, that she had made a terrible mistake. She even offered to go to couples counseling and individual therapy. Then came another shocking revelation. My sister-in-law, who works as an office manager at the same dental practice, discovered that my wife had received a formal warning 3 months ago for inappropriate workplace conduct. She had been discreetly sharing her OnlyFans information with certain patients. She was placed on probation but continued the behavior, leading to her termination 6 weeks ago. She had been pretending to go to work while actually spending those hours creating content and managing her OnlyFans account. Word of her OnlyFans activities reached her parents through another employee at the dental practice. They're conservative people who had always been kind to me, treating me like their own son. When they learned what their daughter had done, they were devastated. Her father, particularly proud of her healthcare career, was heartbroken by how she had jeopardized her professional reputation. Her parents came to see me at my brother's house, apologizing profusely for their daughter's behavior. Her mother was in tears, saying they hadn't raised her to deceive people this way. They fully supported my decision to divorce, which only made my wife more desperate. She started posting on social media about how I was controlling and trying to shame her for being sex-positive and entrepreneurial. Some mutual friends sided with her, calling me insecure and saying I should be proud of having a successful businesswoman wife. But most people, especially those who knew us well, understood this wasn't about the money or even the OnlyFans itself. It was about the extended deception, manipulation, and complete breach of trust. My wife's final attempt to stop the divorce was to claim she might be pregnant. I insisted on accompanying her to a doctor's appointment, which she then refused to schedule, admitting it was a desperate lie to try to delay the divorce process. Following my attorney's advice, I filed for divorce in early January, citing irreconcilable differences, as we live in a no-fault state. My lawyer advised me to communicate only through documented channels, either email or through our legal representatives. My wife initially tried to avoid being served the divorce papers, but after 2 failed attempts at her parents' house, her father convinced her to accept service properly to avoid additional legal complications. The initial divorce petition included a request for temporary orders regarding our shared rental property and bill payments. The court date for temporary orders was set for late January. During this hearing, the judge ordered us to maintain the status quo financial arrangements, meaning we would both continue paying our portions of rent and shared bills as we had been, and neither party could dispose of or hide assets. Our first mediation session was scheduled for February. My wife arrived with her attorney, immediately claiming that I had known about and tacitly approved her OnlyFans activities by accepting the benefits of her additional income. When my attorney presented evidence, including our text messages where she explicitly lied about her work hours and the source of her extra money, plus documentation of her termination from the dental practice, her attorney requested a brief recess to consult with her. After the recess, she changed tactics. She attempted to claim entitlement to half of my inheritance from my grandfather, which I had received 3 years ago and kept in a separate account. My attorney quickly presented bank statements proving the inheritance money had never been commingled with our joint funds, making it separate property under state law. The mediator agreed this was a non-starter under our state's property division laws. The most challenging aspect was dealing with a professional fallout. My wife's OnlyFans subscribers discovered my workplace through her content that had featured identifiable parts of my car in our local area. They began leaving false reviews on the sports bar's social media pages and business listings, claiming everything from health code violations to staff misconduct. My employer's legal team helped get most reviews removed after we provided evidence of the coordinated harassment campaign. Things escalated when we discovered one of my wife's former dental patients, who had subscribed to her OnlyFans, began stalking her at her parents' house. Her father had to file a police report and obtain a restraining order against the individual. This incident served as a wake-up call for my wife regarding the real-world consequences of her actions. My wife's parents proved to be unexpected allies during this process. Her father, a small business owner himself, understood the importance of protecting one's professional reputation. They helped convince her to approach the divorce practically rather than emotionally. Her father offered to cover her legal fees if she agreed to mediation instead of dragging things out in court, which would have resulted in her OnlyFans activities becoming public record through court proceedings. The divorce proceedings were straightforward since we had no children and minimal joint assets. We had been renting our home, and most of our furniture was purchased during the marriage. Following state law, we agreed to split all marital property 50-50ths. The court approved our agreement that she would keep the money in her separate account, including OnlyFans earnings, while I retained my inheritance as separate property. Her request for spousal support was the final hurdle. She argued that her inability to find work in her field was a result of our marriage ending. My attorney successfully argued that her unemployment was a direct consequence of her own workplace misconduct, documented by her former employer, and not related to the marriage dissolution. The judge denied her alimony request, citing that she was young, educated, and capable of finding alternative employment. Throughout these proceedings, my wife's behavior swung between extremes. She would send emails begging for reconciliation, promising therapy and changes, then switch to threats about exposing private details about our marriage online. Her parents finally intervened with an ultimatum. If she continued the harassment or returned to OnlyFans, they would withdraw all support, including her current housing at their home and the legal fee assistance they were providing. The divorce was finalized in late April, approximately 4 months after filing, standard timing for an uncontested divorce in our state. The final hearing was brief, with the judge reviewing our settlement agreement and confirming both parties understood its terms. The agreement included a non-disparagement clause preventing either party from making derogatory public statements about the other, which my attorney suggested to prevent future social media issues. During the final hearing, my wife appeared markedly different from the confident person who had given me the Rolex voucher just 4 months earlier. Gone were the expensive hair treatments and designer clothes she purchased with her OnlyFans earnings. As per our attorney's advice, we didn't interact directly during or after the proceedings, maintaining the professional distance we'd established during mediation. My former mother-in-law reached out through my brother 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized. She shared that my ex-wife had started intensive therapy to address her issues with validation-seeking behavior and financial impulsivity. Her father had helped her secure an entry-level administrative position at his friend's accounting firm, starting at $16 per hour, significantly less than her previous $38 per hour as a dental hygienist. The dental board had placed a note in her record about her professional conduct, making it difficult for her to return to dental work without completing an ethics course and professional review. The online harassment gradually subsided after our attorneys sent cease and desist letters to the most persistent offenders. The sports bar's corporate office recognized my professional handling of the situation and offered me a promotion to regional manager of 3 locations with a significant salary increase. They even provided additional security cameras and updated policies about staff privacy protection. My brother and sister-in-law helped me find a new apartment in a different county, closer to 2 of my managed locations. The fresh start helped, as did the support network of their friends who had no connection to my previous married life. I also started attending a divorce recovery support group at a local community center, which helped me process everything in a healthy way. 6 months after the divorce, I received a formal letter from my ex-wife's therapist, with my ex-wife's permission, containing her written apology as part of her therapy process. She acknowledged specifically how her actions had breached trust, damaged both our professional reputations, and showed disrespect for our marriage. The letter included confirmation that she had permanently deleted all her OnlyFans content and related social media accounts. She didn't ask for reconciliation or forgiveness. It was purely about taking accountability for her actions. Following my attorney's advice, I didn't respond to the letter, but had my lawyer acknowledge its receipt for record-keeping purposes. Some mutual friends have suggested I'm being too rigid, arguing that people deserve second chances. However, they don't understand that this wasn't simply about the OnlyFans account. It was about 10 months of calculated deception, manipulation, gaslighting, and a complete disregard for both our marriage vows and my right to make informed decisions about my life and reputation. The Rolex refund money was put to better use. I used it to take a 2-week vacation with my brother's family to the beach, creating new positive memories to replace the tainted Christmas ones. My brother's kids helped me remember how to laugh again, and the trip gave me time to reflect on everything I'd learned about setting boundaries and trusting my instincts. I've recently started dating again, taking things slow and being upfront about my expectations regarding honesty and communication. My experience has made me more cautious but not bitter. I've learned to ask direct questions early in relationships and to trust my gut when something feels off. While this isn't the path I expected my life to take, the experience taught me valuable lessons about self-respect and the importance of maintaining personal boundaries. The hardest part wasn't losing the marriage, it was accepting that the person I thought I knew never really existed. But sometimes the best gift we can give ourselves is the courage to walk away from situations that compromise our values and self-respect, no matter how difficult that choice may be.